the Must-See Film Club.
How does a film that acquired a pre-release reputation as the worst film of the year become one of the most influential movies ever made?
That's the central question of Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless. It's a film that, upon its release in 1960, didn't just tell a story. It ripped up the rulebook on how stories are told. One critic, Luc Moulet, called it the most representative of the new French cinema, while others found it amateurish and boring.
And yet, audiences in France flocked to it. Over 2 million viewers. It struck a chord, even if people couldn't articulate why. It had this raw, chaotic energy that was completely at odds with the polished, formal cinema of the time.
Totally. Think about what we've discussed recently. The meticulous studio productions like Singin' in the Rain, or even the deeply formal, almost meditative style of Ozu's Tokyo Story. Breathless arrives like a bomb thrown into a cathedral. It's aggressive, nonchalant, sophisticated, and adolescent all at once.
It's a film born from a contradiction. A deep love for classic American cinema, particularly film noir, but also a burning desire to completely deconstruct it. And the story of how it got made is just as revolutionary as what ended up on screen.
It absolutely is. It starts with the budget, or lack thereof. The film was made for around 400,000 to 510,000 francs, which was roughly $80,000 at the time. That's about a third of the average cost for a French film.
An $80,000 bet on a young, fiery film critic who had never directed a feature film. But Godard was clever. He knew he needed a star to make the film commercially viable. So he allocated a huge chunk of that tiny budget, $15,000, almost a sixth of the total, to secure American actress Jean Seberg.
A brilliant, strategic move. With Seberg on board, he had credibility, but with the remaining cash, he had to innovate. There were no studio sets, no elaborate lighting rigs. Godard and his cinematographer, Raoul Coutard, took to the streets of Paris and embraced a guerrilla style of filmmaking.
They were literally shooting on sidewalks without permits, using natural light, and the equipment was just as scrappy. For tracking shots, instead of a proper dolly on tracks, Coutard was often just pushed around in a wheelchair while holding the camera. It's a world away from the massive sound stages of RKO for King Kong.
The camera itself, an Eclair Camaflex, was a lightweight, handheld model. It was so noisy that almost all the dialogue had to be post-dubbed, but this problem became a creative opportunity. Godard famously abandoned the original script treatment and started writing dialogue day by day, sometimes scribbling lines on scraps of paper.
And because the audio was being recorded separately, he could literally feed lines to the actors from off-camera during a take. You can feel that spontaneity, that sense of a film being discovered as it's being made. It's the polar opposite of the tightly choreographed numbers in Singin' in the Rain.
Exactly. Recent reporting from Le Monde confirmed this when the original handwritten script was exhibited at Cannes just a few months ago. It was far more extensive than people thought, around 72 pages. But it shows how Godard was developing his improvisational approach even on the page. The production itself was just this frantic 23-day shoot in August and September of 1959, with Godard and his crew inventing a new film language on the fly.
And the most famous piece of that new language is, of course, the jump cut.
The jump cut. It's so iconic to this film, but it's important to understand just how radical it was. For decades, the goal of cinematic editing was continuity, to be invisible. You wanted smooth transitions so the audience would be completely immersed in the story.
Right. The whole point was to not draw attention to the filmmaking process. Ozu's editing in Tokyo's Story is very deliberate and noticeable, but it creates a specific, patient rhythm. The jump cut does the opposite. It's jagged, disruptive. So what is it, technically?
Think of a single, continuous shot of a person talking. A jump cut is when you literally cut out a few seconds from the middle of that shot. So the person's head will suddenly jump to a new position. There's no cutaway to something else, no smooth dissolve. It's a rupture in time and space.
It's intentionally jarring, and in Breathless, it serves so many purposes. It reflects the impulsive, erratic nature of the main character, Michel, played by Jean-Paul Belmondo. His mind is always racing, jumping from one thought to the next, and the editing mirrors that perfectly.
Exactly. It also constantly reminds you that you're watching a film. This is a Brechtian device, breaking the fourth wall, preventing total immersion to encourage critical thought. Godard has characters look directly into the camera. He uses abrupt music cues from Marcel Solal's jazz score that comment on the action rather than just supporting it. He's foregrounding the film as a construct.
It's not just the cuts, though. He contrasts them with these super long takes, sometimes 2 or 3 minutes, that can feel languid or express a kind of moral laziness in the characters. The pacing is intentionally inconsistent. He's using rhythm itself as a storytelling tool, much like Fritz Lang used the absence and presence of sound in M.
And the camera work from Godard is just as revolutionary. The handheld camera gives it a documentary feel, a sense of immediacy. He's pushing the film stock, Ilford HP5, to get more sensitivity in low light, giving it a grainy, high-contrast look. He's capturing the real Paris, not a postcard version. It feels alive and dangerous.
So you have these 3 pillars, the guerrilla cinematography, the improvised script, and this radical, disruptive editing. Together, they create a film that feels completely untethered from the rules of the past.
What's fascinating is how much of this innovation was born directly from the film's biggest constraint, its budget.
This is a classic constraint breeds creativity narrative. The jump cut itself is the perfect example. The story goes that the film's first cut was around 2.5 hours long, but the producer, Georges de Beauregard, needed it to be 90 minutes.
The conventional way to do that is to cut entire scenes. But Godard, inspired by Jean Rouche's documentary Moi un Noir, decided to do something unprecedented in a professional feature. He just started chopping out sections from within the scenes, within the shots themselves.
So a technique that became a stylistic hallmark of the French New Wave, interpreted by critics like Andrew Sarris as an existential representation of moral disjunction, started as a pragmatic solution to make the film shorter. That's incredible!
It completely redefines the role of the director. Godard was a proponent of the camera stylo, or camera pen theory, the idea that a director should wield a camera with the same personal freedom that a writer uses a pen. Breathless feels like watching someone's thoughts unfold in real time. It's messy, contradictory, and full of cinematic homages and pop culture references.
He's quoting film noir, but also parodying it. Belmondo's character, Michel, idolizes Humphrey Bogart, but he's a clumsy, almost pathetic version of that archetype. Godard is simultaneously celebrating and subverting the genres he loves. He's inviting the viewer to be an active participant in interpreting the film, not a passive consumer.
And this whole approach, low budget, small crew, real locations, created a new economic model for filmmaking. The financial success of Breathless proved you didn't need a massive studio apparatus to make a commercially and critically successful film. It directly encouraged producers to take chances on other young, cinephile directors, fueling the French New Wave.
It democratized the medium in a way. It showed that all you needed was a camera, an idea, and a willingness to, as Raoul Coutard put it, throw out the rule book.
But not everyone saw it as a revolution. As we said, the initial reception was deeply divided. For every critic who hailed it as the crowning point of the new wave, there was another who found it amateurish. Some early viewers described it as boring, complaining about its apparent indifference to holding my interest.
Which is understandable if you're coming in expecting a traditional crime thriller. The plot is secondary. It's a character study, a mood piece. It's a languid operation, as one person put it, punctuated by these bursts of chaotic energy. It doesn't hold your hand.
And the most fascinating perspective might be from Godard himself. He later viewed the film's success as a mistake. He said his intention was to dismantle established filmmaking conventions, to show that the old way was dead.
But instead, he accidentally created a new kind of cool. Belmondo's effortlessly charming rogue, the jump cuts, the jazz score, it all became a new aesthetic to be copied. He set out to destroy cinematic language and ended up creating a new, highly influential dialect. That's a profound irony.
It is. He wanted to blow the whole thing up, and instead, he gave future filmmakers a new set of tools. He didn't want to be the new rulebook. He wanted to prove you didn't need one. But the film's impact was so immense that its techniques became the new rules for a generation of independent and avant-garde filmmakers.
And that legacy is just immense. Roger Ebert compared its impact to Citizen Kane. You can see its DNA everywhere. In the American New Wave, Arthur Penn's Bonnie and Clyde has that same romantic anti-hero energy. Martin Scorsese's early films use those rough Godardian edits.
Absolutely. Quentin Tarantino's dialogue-heavy scenes and pop culture references are pure Godard. You can even draw a line to movements like the British kitchen sink dramas and Dogma 95. Indie Cinema Magazine wrote a piece a few months ago saying the film's core idea, that a film could begin anywhere and end anywhere, is basically the cornerstone of modern independent cinema.
And what's truly wild is how this 65-year-old film is suddenly more relevant than ever in late 2025. Just last week, on November 14th, Richard Linklater released a new film called Nouvelle Vague.
Right. It premiered at Cannes in May and just dropped on Netflix. It's a dramatization of the chaotic 23-day shoot of Breathless, shot in black and white in French. It delves into the creative tensions, Godard's improvisational style, and the on-set dynamics.
The reviews note it's more of a polished homage than a disruptive work in the vein of Godard, but it's bringing this incredible story to a whole new generation. The Washington Post had a great piece on Zoe Deutsch's portrayal of Jean Seberg and the lengths she went to capture the persona.
It's amazing. We have a new film about the making of Breathless, and we also just had the public unveiling of its long-lost original script. It's a moment of rediscovery. The film continues to be this inexhaustible text that we analyze and argue about, a film that, as Godard said, blew apart the old rules and left us to pick up the pieces.
It remains one of the ultimate statements on cinematic freedom. It's a film that proves that sometimes the most revolutionary act is to simply start filming without a map and trust that you'll find your way by breaking all the rules.